Hello, Jan. Good to have you on as well. And we're about to get underway. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to write a presentation, how to write a great speech. And it can be a keynote speech, a conference speech. It can even be a wedding speech. And it's 5 steps that I think every speech writer should go through. And you'll see as we go through that I'm not teaching you any rocket science. I'm actually going back to basics, but putting some structure and a little bit of theory behind what you will know as a basic writing exercise. So Peter Dew's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is helping you find your voice so that you can confidently, effectively share your ideas, your knowledge, your expertise with your communities, with your workplaces. How to participate, ask questions. We've got the chat box going and the Q&A going. So please do type questions in. Ask me questions after as well. Take notes as we go. Participate by putting in any comments, any personal experiences, and think about a presentation you've got coming up, or maybe about a presentation you've delivered in the past. Is there anything you would have done differently in the preparation of the writing, of getting ready for that presentation, for writing that speech? So it's about applying some of the knowledge, the tips, the experience I'm going to share with you to your individual presentation style, your situation. Let's get started. So the first thing is be clear on your message. So what do I mean by clear on your message? Be clear on your message. What's the purpose of you having this conversation? What's the purpose of having the chat, of delivering the message? One of the mistakes that people do is they give vague messages. And there's a few names for these vague messages. They're called scattergun approach. So we sort of just do that machine gun and hope that something works. It's called spray and pray. So we say a lot of verbal diarrhea and hope something sticks. And audience walks out, and when questioned, some people think you said this, some people think you said that, other people think you said something entirely different. Verbal diarrhea, also called a verbal dump. Effective presentations avoid any confusion, any misinterpretation of your core message. This is where you start preparing your presentation. Because if you don't know where you want your audience to go, anything you say will take them there. So the clarity of purpose is where you should begin writing your presentation. Let me help you get some clarity. So ask yourself 2 questions. And you can test this with your audience. You can do an audience audit. You can do a pre-workshop survey. You can do a Facebook poll. You can do a chimp survey, Survey Monkey, just to be clear on what people need from your presentation. So ask yourself this, once you've done your research, once you're clear, what do people want to remember? So wherever you are, let's say I've done this presentation and you bump into me in the Burke Street Mall in Melbourne, Hay Street here in Perth, or Pitt Street in Sydney, Queen Street in Brisbane, and you come running up to me in 3 months' time. That's 12 weeks from now. And you come running up and you say, Peter, I loved your presentation. What do I want you to remember and say back to me? Be aware people only remember one thing. So what is that big overarching core message? And here's the second thing to get clarity. Why do I care? Why does it matter as an audience member? Why does it matter to me? So this is where you need to move into your audience's footsteps or put on your audience's hat. If you've got a really powerful message and you think it's really important and everyone else in the room really doesn't care, then you're giving the wrong message to the wrong audience. So this is how you gain your clarity of purpose. What is it that I want them to remember? And why does it matter to them? Now we can move on to step 2. Having had clarity of purpose, what our core message is and why it matters, we can start with an opening, an engaging opening, an attention-grabbing opening that lets me know I'm in the right room for the core message that's going to come, that probably lets me know that I'm in the right room for the problem that I have in the area that you're speaking on, around my transition to retirement, around my accessing the disability insurance scheme, around my risk of vaccination from COVID-19, my risk of not being vaccinated as a result of COVID-19, depending on what your message is. Develop an engaging opening. There's a rule, we call it the rule of primacy. Primary words, first words matter. People remember, they need to be influential. So think of your opening as valuable real estate. Don't just dismiss it and start with what I call a soft opening. Good morning, everyone. My name's Peter Dew. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you turn on your mobile phones? Toilets are out the back. We'll have morning tea at 10:30. And this is a lot of housekeeping that apparently you're going to remember, but has no value to you. Less and less people put their hands up, but let's assume you do still read newspapers or magazines or journals, online or in the written form. Most people look at the headline in the article. I've just read the West Australian today, and I've probably looked at 15 articles and glossed over 20 articles. The headline did not grab my attention, wasn't interested, moved on to the next page. Wow, that's interesting. Very powerful information, some statistics around number of female CEOs in Australia, and International Women's Day has just passed us, or International Women's Week, as I like to think. And there's more CEOs named Peter and John than there are women CEOs. Amazing. Your opening is the lines of an article that decide whether people are going to tune in or tune out, read on or turn the page. What are you going to do to start strong? The rule of primacy. Amazing statistic, a story that just grabs attention. A quotation. I often start with a quotation. Rhetorical devices. Who in the room is a little bit afraid of? Who in the room would like to have some skills around public speaking? And get that involvement that lets people know they're in the room straight away. Let's move to the end of your presentation. I want you to nail your ending. No soft landings. Thank you very much. You've been a really nice crowd. Lovely, lovely day. Have that strong ending. And there's another behavioral psychology rule. It's called the rule of recency. So at about 9:29 West Australian time, as I sum up, the last words I say will be the freshest in your memory. So they need to have value. So you can end your presentation by summing up, by having a call to action, by having a memorable statement, by painting a bright future, a picture that shows how things will be if everybody does what you've just spoken about. How are you going to nail your ending? It's called the rule of recency. Within the mining sector, one of the things that I teach people to do at the end of their pre-starts, if they're talking about fatigue, if they're talking about dehydration, if they're talking about snake bite, increase in snake activity, if you only do one thing today, reread your first aid manual in relation to helping someone with snake bite. And if you've done a lesson on snake bite, number one, immobilize. Number two, get help. Number three, whatever the 3 steps are in the current methodology of treating someone with snake bite. Apply a tourniquet, don't move. Those things you can reiterate or summarize those and then have that call to action. So familiarize yourself with this 3-step process. Have that call to action. The mistakes, I mentioned soft landings. Thank you very much. You've been a lovely, lovely crowd. And sometimes people just stop talking and that's the end. The only reason we know they've concluded is because they've stopped talking. Don't let that happen to the ending of your presentation. The 4th step, in fact, I'm just going to take a step back. So what we've got now is your core message. So think of that as your middle of your presentation. What do I want people to remember and why does it matter to them? I've now worked out my opening. This is the beginning of the presentation. I've now asked you to have a really strong ending. Nail your ending. Call to action, summary, a confronting statement. You can see now you've just got a beginning, middle and end, opening, body, conclusion. It's just a traditional speech structure, but by getting clarity of purpose, understanding the first 30 seconds is valuable real estate, the rule of primacy. The last 30 seconds, the rule of recency, is also valuable real estate. I've put a bit of science and rigor around beginning, middle and end. What 3 or 4 stories illustrate, amplify, or demonstrate your core message? If I'm talking about the importance of knowing your audience, and you can do an audience audit, you can do a cultural audit, who's going to be in the room, what do they want from you? I can tell a story about a friend of mine who is blind, goes out and talks, and keeps receiving, for some strange reason, a gift of a book to thank him for the wonderful presentation. A blind man is receiving a book to say thank you. So what 3 or 4 key points can you put to illustrate your core message? If you've got a 7-step process, maybe shrink it down to 3 key points and maybe have point 1A and point 1B, point 2A, point 2B, and point 3A, point 3B, and point 3C. That would be 7 points. Because people remember 3. So the reason I prefer 3 to 4 is it's called the rule of 3. You've probably heard of Goldilocks and the 3 bears. You've probably heard of 3 blind mice, 3 wise men, 3 stooges, 3 little pigs. In a court of law, you've got to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The 3 seems to be memorable, rhythmical, and it just works. Once you've identified your 3 key points, develop your stories, your case studies, that illustrate your points. I jumped the gun then. So my point that I wanted to make was that know your audience. Then I went into the story. I meant to tell you now that what story illustrates your point. And here's the thing, you can build a bank of stories. You can build a library of stories. Stories are everywhere. They're your experiences, they're your case studies, they're the things that have gone bad, the things that have turned pear-shaped, the projects you've recovered, the families you've helped, the way you've been treated, your success, you overcoming adversity, to illustrate the point. People remember stories more than data, more than analysis, more than numbers, more than facts. So what's the story that you're going to tell, the case study, the example is going to illustrate the point? Now, I'm just going to I'm going to pause for a moment. Are there any questions? One question I get asked a fair bit is from accountants and sometimes engineers, but surely we need the data to prove the point. Yes, we do, but people traditionally don't remember the data, they remember the story. So this is what we say. So head first, that's the data, that's the information, that's the break-even analysis, that's the pros and cons, return on investment. Heart second. The story triggers the heart, and the heart is where we have that feeling, that emotional, that gut instinct that this is the right way to go. And that's what we take out of the room after you've spoken. So I'm just going to summarize the 5 steps, and then I'm going to illustrate this for you in a little bit more detail. So be clear on your core message. What do you want people to remember and why? Develop a strong opening, have a strong ending, 3 points, 4 if you need, and develop your stories that illustrate your points. So I'm going to change my share screen and I'm going to try and do some drawing. All right, we'll erase that, clear all drawings. Move that over there. All right, so this is what I'm asking you to do. Ask yourself, what do I want people to remember in 3 months' time? Why does that matter to them? Excuse my mouse writing. And it's what people walk out with, the core message. Learn and maybe script that 30-second opening. 30 seconds. Who in this room is a little bit afraid of public speaking? Who in this room is not comfortable in front of 150, 200, 300 people? Who in the room would improve public speaking, help your career, help your work? Good morning, everyone. My name's Peter Dew, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to overcome your fear of public speaking. And as we saw from that little survey, everyone in the room has some fear, some nerves, would like to improve their public speaking. Or with a quote. So Winston Churchill said, if you can stand on your feet and speak to a group of people, you possess a very powerful skill. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Winning Presentation Skills Workshop. My name's Peter Dew. As Winston Churchill said, and then I move into my content, learn and script that 30-second conclusion. Nail your ending. Yep. If you only do one thing today, go home and review your snakebite policy. There's been 25 snakes detected in the last week within our camp. Go back to your room, go back to your workplace and review your snake bite policy. 3 points that illustrate whatever your core message is. Core message might be there's an increase in snake activity. Why does it matter to you? Approximately 10 people a year die in Australia from snake bite. Here in the Northwest, we have less access to vaccine. So these might be the three things: immobilise, tourniquet, phone for help, phone the paramedic on whatever the number is on that camp. So they're your 3 points that are going to illustrate your core message, and then you build those bank of stories. I've accidentally moved to snakebite. We had a lady in Fremantle about 2 years ago who was walking along the beach in almost Fremantle City, South Freo, and just noticed a little nick on her leg, a little bit of pain, thought that might be a snake, kept walking to her husband at the car park, 15, 20 minutes away. And by the time she got there, she said, oh, I think I've been bitten by a snake and I think I've left it too late. The story that illustrates the importance of being immobilizing, not moving. So these are the stories that illustrate your point. So I call them your bank of stories. So that's your bank of stories. And if you've got a 45-minute speech, you might do 3 stories per point. If you've got a 30-minute speech, you might do 2 stories per point. So you've got that ability to remove a story. If you've got a 5-minute safety share, a 5-minute toolbox meeting, you might only give 1 example per point. But the core message remains the same, the opening remains the same, and the conclusion remains the same. If someone really liked that 5-minute toolbox or safety share, can you speak? The leadership team will be coming up. Can you do a 30-minute presentation on what you've just spoken about? Sure. So you bring those stories back, which enables you to now have a 30-minute presentation. You want to run a 2-day workshop, a 2-hour workshop on preparing for increased snakes, then yeah, you add more stories, more examples, and you'll do some demonstrations and some practicals, and you might have a bandage where you show people how to tie things up. So this is a foolproof way of writing a presentation of speech. And this particular chook scratching diagram is in fact a mind map. So let me ask you, So to present without notes, so you're not reading from a script, and you've got a 45-minute keynote. With this mind map, you have that 30-second introduction that you practice and learn. So Winston Churchill said, if you can stand on your feet and speak to a group of people, you possess a very powerful skill. You've got that 30-second ending, that call to action, that summary that you learn. You're clear of your core message and why it matters to the audience. This means your presentation, your speech becomes about the audience, not about you, it's about the audience. And then the stories are just anecdotes that you remember. So I can write one word. My friend who lost his sight, or blind man. One sentence, my friend who lost his sight keeps getting given books. If my point is make sure you know who's in the room. Immobilise, Fremantle lady, I'd get the newspaper article and maybe she regrets, too late, she regrets not staying still. The beauty of stories is that you don't have to remember them. You don't have to learn them. You don't have to script them. The beauty of stories are that they are your unique intellectual property. They are your experience with that point you're trying to make. So build your stories, build your bank of stories. I'm now going to do a new share. Right, just get that into presentation mode. All right, just a quick one on upcoming webinars, and I'll go back and just summarize for you. Just want to make sure I've got the right screen. Yep. So 6 habits that public speakers get into, 6 bad habits. That's coming up on Thursday, the 25th. Workshops coming up. Leadership for Women in Perth. That's Monday and Tuesday next week with my wife, Violet Dew and Kyla Morrison. And I'm going to Bendigo, going to Victoria. And I've got a public workshop on the 18th of March, winning presentation skills. If anyone's interested, the information is on our website, or send me an email. Any questions from today's webinar, also send me an email. And just checking if there's any questions, any chat. All right. So how to write a foolproof 5 steps to write a presentation, a keynote, a conference, a wedding speech. Start with clarity of purpose. What do I want them to remember and why? Start strong, end strong. 3 points in the middle, maybe 4 if you need. 3 is really good. Then add stories, anecdotes that surround that particular point. Second point, have stories. Third point, stories. And choose 1 or maybe 2 stories per point. And the stories you choose will best suit the audience you're speaking with. So thanks, everyone. My name's Peter Dew. Remember, what you have to say matters. Don't be afraid to share your voice. And when you get before an audience, it's a privilege. And with that privilege comes responsibility. Take time to structure, write, and prepare a really good presentation. Glad you love the chook scratchings. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Charmaine. And hopefully I'll see you in future webinars. Bye for now.